The grand chamber of the Galactic Council sparkled with the light of 1,000 stars through its crystal dome. Around the massive circular table sat the most powerful warriors in the known universe, species that had conquered worlds, won countless battles, and faced death without flinching. Today, they were afraid. Admiral Stone, the human representative, sat quietly in his corner, watching the chaos unfold. The council members, tall, muscular, and armed to the teeth, argued loudly among themselves. Their voices echoed off the chamber walls as they discussed the latest crisis. "These energy beings have already destroyed 3 outposts," thundered Representative Bolt, his metallic skin reflecting the starlight. "They show no mercy, no weakness." The room fell silent as Admiral Stone observed a hologram floating above the table. It showed massive clouds of purple energy consuming everything in their path. Space stations, ships, and even small moons disappeared into their glowing mass. "Our strongest weapons pass right through them," said Commander Red, a towering figure whose race was known for their battle prowess. "We've lost 50 ships trying to fight them directly." The council leader, an ancient warrior who had survived 1,000 battles, raised his hand for silence. "We face an enemy unlike any before. Our traditional methods of combat are useless." Admiral Stone watched as each representative described their failed attempts to stop the energy beings. The proudest warrior races in the galaxy had tried everything they knew: massive battle fleets, energy weapons, even suicide runs. Nothing worked. "Perhaps," suggested Representative Bolt with a sneer, "we should ask our newest members what they think." Though I doubt the humans, with their obsession with safety protocols and caution, would have anything useful to contribute. All eyes turned to Admiral Stone. The human didn't rise from his seat or puff up with anger at the insult. Instead, he studied the hologram carefully, his weathered face thoughtful. "Have we tried understanding them?" he asked simply. The chamber erupted in laughter. Commander Red slammed his massive fist on the table. "Understand them. They're destroying everything in their path. They're mindless destroyers." Admiral Stone stood slowly, his plain uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate battle armor worn by the others. "With respect, Commander, we don't know that. We've only tried to fight them. Has anyone attempted to study their behavior patterns? To observe them from a safe distance? To collect data?" "Typical human cowardice," muttered someone in the back. The Admiral continued calmly. "On Earth, we learned the hard way that rushing in without understanding often leads to disaster. We developed protocols, safety measures, and observation techniques because we had to. Many of our greatest discoveries came from careful study rather than direct confrontation." The council leader leaned forward, his ancient eyes studying the human carefully. "You suggest we waste time watching while more outposts are destroyed. I suggest we try to understand what we're dealing with before more lives are lost in failed attacks." Stone replied. "Earth has experience with energy containment, radiation protocols, and dealing with unknown phenomena. Let us send a research vessel. If we fail, you can always return to the direct approach." Silence filled the chamber. The warrior races looked at each other uncertainly. Their entire culture was built on facing danger head-on. Yet all their courage and strength had failed against this new threat. Finally, the council leader spoke. "The human way has failed to impress us before. Their caution seems like cowardice, their protocols like fear. But—" he paused, looking at the hologram of another outpost being destroyed. "Our way has failed. We will try yours, Admiral Stone." "I'll contact Earth immediately," Stone said. The research vessel Prudence is well-equipped for this type of mission. As the council members filed out, Representative Bolt approached Stone. "Your people named a ship Prudence. How typical of humans, celebrating caution instead of bravery." Admiral Stone smiled slightly. "Sometimes, Representative, the bravest thing you can do is take the time to be careful." As he left the chamber, Stone knew the hard part was just beginning. He had to prove that human cowardice, their careful, methodical approach to danger, might succeed where all the courage in the galaxy had failed. The fate of multiple worlds now rested on humanity's most criticized trait, their unwillingness to rush blindly into danger. The research vessel Prudence dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the danger zone. Captain Tom Miller stood on the bridge, watching his crew work with practiced efficiency. Unlike the warships of other species, the Prudence's bridge was filled with sensors, scientific equipment, and safety barriers. All containment fields active, reported Officer James from his station. Distance from nearest energy being 50,000 kilometers and holding. The massive purple cloud that had terrified the warrior races glowed in the distance, its ethereal form shifting and pulsing against the backdrop of stars. The crew watched it through their heavily shielded viewports, their expressions focused but calm. "Begin long-range scans," Miller ordered. "Let's see what we're really dealing with." A harsh laugh came from behind him. Representative Bolt had insisted on accompanying the mission, presumably to witness what he expected to be human failure. Such a waste of time. He sneered, his metallic skin gleaming under the bridge lights. "You should be charging in, weapons ready." Miller didn't respond immediately. He watched as his science team began collecting data, their instruments probing the energy being from a safe distance. Years of handling dangerous materials on Earth had taught humans the value of patience. "Look at all these readings," said Dr. Lisa Wells, the chief scientist. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel. "The energy signature is complex, almost like a language." "A language," Bolt scoffed. "These are mindless destroyers. They've consumed 3 outposts." "Yes," Miller replied thoughtfully, "but have we asked ourselves why? Look at the pattern of destruction." He gestured to a map showing the energy being's path. "It's not random. They're moving in a specific direction." The bridge crew worked steadily through the next several hours, gathering more data. Other ships would have grown restless, their warrior crews demanding action. But the humans maintained their distance, watching, measuring, learning. "Captain," called Officer James suddenly, "I'm detecting something unusual. The energy being's outer layer, it's not aggressive. It's defensive." Miller leaned forward, studying the readings. "Like a shield." "More like," James paused, adjusting his instruments, "more like a protective bubble. And inside, there's something else. Something solid." Bolt stepped forward, his armor clanking. "Impossible. Our best scanners showed nothing but energy." "Your scanners were looking for weapon signatures," Dr. Wells explained. "We're looking for life signs, communication patterns, structural anomalies. Different approach, different results." Miller watched as more data flowed in. His crew had discovered more in a few hours of careful observation than the warrior races had learned in weeks of direct combat. But he knew the hard part was still ahead. "Prepare the probe," he ordered. "Let's try to establish contact." "Contact," Bolt nearly shouted. "You would try to talk to these destroyers." "We would try to understand them," Miller corrected calmly. "That's what humans do. We observe, we learn, we try to communicate. It's kept us alive through countless first contact situations." The probe, a small, heavily shielded device designed specifically for this mission, launched smoothly from the Prudence. It carried no weapons, only sensors and communication equipment. The crew watched tensely as it approached the energy being. "Energy patterns shifting," reported James. "The being is responding to the probe." The purple cloud swirled, tendrils of energy reaching out to examine the probe. But instead of destroying it, as everyone expected, the being seemed to study it. "Receiving data," Dr. Wells announced excitedly. "The probe's universal translators are picking up patterns, mathematical sequences. This isn't random energy, Captain. This is deliberate communication." Miller nodded, a small smile forming on his face. "So they're not mindless destroyers after all. They're trying to tell us something." Bolt stood speechless, watching as the humans' careful approach yielded results that all the bravery and firepower in the galaxy couldn't achieve. The cowardly humans, with their endless safety protocols and cautious methods, had made more progress in understanding the energy beings in one day than the warrior races had in weeks of combat. "Send the data to the Council," Miller ordered, "and prepare for the next phase. We're going to need more probes and more patience." The Prudence held its position, its crew ready for the long process ahead. Sometimes, Miller knew, the greatest victories came not from charging in, but from having the courage to wait, watch, and learn. In the ship's main laboratory, Dr. Wells hunched over her workstation, surrounded by holographic displays showing complex energy patterns. 3 days had passed since their first contact with the energy beings, and the Prudence's crew hadn't wasted a moment of it. "Look at this pattern here," she said, pointing to a recurring wave in the data. "It's similar to how we contained plasma in the old fusion reactors back on Earth." Captain Miller studied the display, while Representative Bolt paced impatiently behind them. The metallic alien had grown increasingly agitated as the humans continued their methodical approach. "Your species would study a forest fire while it burns everything around it," Bolt growled. "We should have brought battleships, not scientists." "Those energy patterns," Miller said, ignoring Bolt's complaints, "they remind me of something. Officer James, pull up the historical files on the radiation containment protocols from the Mars incident." The young officer's fingers flew across his console, bringing up ancient Earth documents. "Here, sir. When we first colonized Mars, we encountered unexpected radiation pockets in the deep mines." "And how did we solve it?" Miller asked, though he already knew the answer. "Containment fields," James replied. "But not just any fields. We had to tune them to specific frequencies, match the energy's natural resonance." Dr. Wells straightened suddenly, her eyes wide. "That's it. These beings, their outer energy shell, it's like they're trying to contain something. Not attack, but protect." The laboratory came alive with activity. The human crew moved with purpose, each person knowing their role in this careful dance of discovery. Where warrior races saw only threats to be destroyed, they saw puzzles to be solved. "Start fabricating test containment fields," Miller ordered. "Small scale first. Safety protocols at maximum." Representative Bolt watched in disgust as the humans built tiny test chambers, each one carefully shielded and monitored. More delays, more tests. While you play with your toys, more outposts could be destroyed. "Better to lose time than lives," Miller replied calmly. "Each test teaches us something new." Hours passed as the crew ran experiment after experiment. They failed repeatedly, but each failure brought new data, new understanding. The humans documented everything, adjusted their approach, and tried again. "Captain," Dr. Wells called out suddenly. "Test Chamber 17. Look at the energy response." Everyone gathered around her station. Inside a small containment field, a tiny purple energy sample pulsed in a steady rhythm. "It's stabilizing," James observed. "The field frequency matches their natural pattern almost perfectly." Miller nodded slowly. "Now we're getting somewhere. Scale it up, carefully." As the team worked, Miller reflected on humanity's journey to the stars. Their species had been called cowards for their cautious approach to space exploration. Other races bragged about conquering new worlds through strength and courage, while humans insisted on safety measures, quarantine protocols, and careful study before colonization. But those same protocols had saved countless lives. The Mars incident would have been a catastrophe if they'd rushed in blindly. The Europa crisis, the Venus colonies, the Jupiter mining operations, all successful because humans took the time to understand before acting. "Energy containment field scaled to ship-size parameters," James reported. "Running simulations now." Dr. Wells studied the results intently. "The math works. The field should be able to safely contain one of the beings without harming it." "Should," Bolt interrupted. "You would risk everything on calculations and theories." "We risk everything by not understanding what we're dealing with," Miller countered. "These beings haven't attacked anything in 3 days, not since we started communicating. That's not the behavior of mindless destroyers. The captain turned to his crew. Prepare the main containment system. Full safety protocols. We'll test it tomorrow after everyone's had rest and clear minds. As the crew prepared for their next shift, Representative Bolt stood at a viewport, watching the distant purple glow of the energy being. "I don't understand you humans," he said quietly. "You have no warrior pride, no desire for glorious battle. You treat every challenge like a science experiment." Miller joined him at the viewport. "We learned long ago that glory means nothing if you're dead. Pride doesn't protect your people. Understanding does." The Prudence continued its orbit, its crew methodically preparing for their biggest test yet. Tomorrow would prove whether human caution was truly cowardice or the wisdom that might save the galaxy. Morning shift aboard the Prudence began with a level of focused intensity the warrior races would never understand. Instead of battle cries and weapons checks, there were careful equipment inspections and safety protocol reviews. "All containment systems at full power," Officer James reported from his station. "Backup generators online and ready." Captain Miller stood at the center of the bridge, watching his crew prepare for their most crucial test. The massive containment field generator they'd constructed dominated the ship's forward section, its complex array of emitters pointing toward the waiting energy being. "Begin transmission of the invitation signal," he ordered. Dr. Wells activated the modified probe they'd developed. It broadcast a complex pattern of energy pulses, a message they hoped the beings would understand. The bridge crew held their breath, waiting. "Movement detected," James announced. "The energy being is responding." Through the reinforced viewport, they watched as the massive purple cloud shifted, a tendril of energy extending toward their ship. Unlike its previous destructive appearances, this approach seemed almost cautious. "They're copying our pattern," Dr. Wells said excitedly. "They understand." Representative Bolt, who had been unusually quiet, stepped forward. "If you're wrong about this, you'll doom us all." "And if we're right," Miller replied, "we'll be the first to truly understand these beings." Activate the containment field. The ship's generators hummed as energy flowed through the emitters. A massive invisible field formed in space, not a trap or a weapon, but a safe space for communication. The energy being hesitated at its edge. "They're scanning the field," James reported. "Energy patterns suggest." Analysis. "Of course," Miller nodded. "They're being careful too. They're studying our offering, just as we studied them." Minutes stretched into tense hours. The warrior races would have abandoned such a passive approach long ago, but the humans waited patiently. Their caution was matched by the being's own careful examination. Finally, something changed. "Captain," Dr. Wells called out. "The being's outer layer, it's synchronizing with our containment field." The purple energy cloud began to flow into the designated space, its movements deliberate and controlled. As it entered the field, its chaotic outer shell stabilized, becoming more transparent. "Amazing," breathed James. "Sir, I'm getting clear readings now. There's definitely a solid structure inside that energy field. It's a ship." The crew watched in wonder as the energy field thinned, revealing glimpses of a crystalline vessel within. The violent, destructive force that had terrified the galaxy was actually a protective shield around something far more delicate. "Life signs confirmed," Dr. Wells reported, her voice trembling with excitement. "They're alive in there." Representative Bolt stepped closer to the viewport, his metallic features showing confusion. "All this time, we were attacking refugees." "Not refugees," Miller corrected, studying the readings. "Explorers. Look at their ship's design. It's built for deep space research, just like us." A new signal emanated from the crystalline vessel, more complex than before. The universal translators hummed as they processed the information. "They're thanking us," Dr. Wells translated. "Their protective field, it was malfunctioning, growing unstable. They couldn't control it properly. Every time someone attacked them, it reacted defensively, growing more volatile. And we're the first ones who tried to help instead of attack." Miller finished. The first ones to offer containment instead of combat. The bridge crew worked through the next few hours, establishing clearer communication with the beings. They learned that the crystalline ship came from far beyond known space, its mission one of peaceful exploration. When their protective field began malfunctioning, they had tried to find help, but every aggressive response from the warrior races had only made things worse. "Send word to the council," Miller ordered. "Tell them we've made peaceful contact. And tell them we'll need their help, not their weapons, but their resources. These beings need assistance repairing their ship." As the message was sent, Representative Bolt approached Miller. "Your caution," he said slowly, "what we called cowardice. It succeeded where all our courage failed." Miller smiled slightly. "Sometimes the bravest thing isn't to fight what you don't understand, but to take the time to understand what you fear." Above them, the crystalline ship glowed softly within its stabilizing field, a testament to the power of patience over aggression and understanding over fear. The peace didn't last long. Just as the Prudence's crew was establishing stable communications with the crystalline ship, alarms blared across every deck. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Officer James called out, "Reading 15. No, 20 warships. It's the combined battle fleet." Captain Miller's face hardened as he watched the massive warships appear. The warrior races had apparently grown tired of waiting for results. "They're charging weapons," James reported tensely. "They're not responding to our hails." The crystalline ship's energy field pulsed erratically, responding to the threat. Purple tendrils of energy started reaching out defensively, just as they had during previous encounters. No, Dr. Wells muttered, watching her readings. "The containment field is destabilizing. Their defensive response is too strong." Representative Bolt stepped forward. "My people are among that fleet. Let me try to communicate with them." "Energy levels rising," James warned. "The crystalline ship's field is becoming unstable. If it collapses..." Miller made a quick decision. "Divert all power to the containment field. Engineer Roberts, get me options." Chief Engineer Roberts' voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, we might be able to modify our field to absorb the excess energy, like we did with the reactor breach back on Europa Station." "The war fleet is moving into attack position," James reported. "They're targeting both us and the crystalline ship." Miller opened a channel to the approaching fleet. "This is Captain Miller of the Earth vessel Prudence. Stand down. We have established peaceful contact. Any aggressive action could trigger a catastrophic reaction." The only response was the continued approach of the warships. "Containment field at 120% capacity and rising," Dr. Wells called out. "We can't hold it much longer." Engineer Roberts' voice came again. "Captain, I have an idea. It's risky, but remember how we used to handle unstable nuclear material back on Earth? We create a resonance chamber to slowly bleed off excess energy. Can you adapt that concept for this situation?" Miller asked. "Yes, but we'll need to modify our shield emitters. It'll leave us vulnerable." The captain looked at the approaching warships, then at the struggling crystalline ship. Human cowardice had gotten them this far. Maybe it was time for some calculated courage. "Do it," he ordered. "Dr. Wells, send our complete findings to the war fleet. Let them see what we're dealing with. James, drop our defensive shields and divert that power to Roberts." "Captain," Bolt protested, "without shields, a single shot will destroy us." "Then let's hope they realize we're not the enemy," Miller replied calmly. "Roberts, begin the modification." The next few minutes were tense. The war fleet continued its approach as the Prudence's crew worked frantically to convert their systems. The crystalline ship's energy field pulsed more violently, threatening to break free. "Modifications complete," Roberts reported. "Activating resonance field now." A new type of energy field sprang up around both ships. Instead of containing the purple energy, it began to harmonize with it, drawing off the excess power gradually, safely. Energy levels stabilizing, Dr. Wells announced. The crystalline ship's field is coming back under control. The war fleet had stopped its advance. Their sensors would be showing them the same data the Prudence had collected, proof that this was not an enemy to be fought, but a peaceful species in need of help. Receiving transmission from the fleet flagship, James said, They're standing down. The crisis passed as quickly as it had begun. The warrior races, finally understanding the situation, shifted from battle mode to assistance. Their powerful ships, originally intended for destruction, now helped maintain the stabilizing field around the crystalline vessel. Miller turned to Representative Bolt. Sometimes the greatest victory comes not from winning a battle, but from preventing one. Bolt nodded slowly. You humans, you turned what we saw as weakness into strength. Your caution saved lives today. As the combined fleet worked together to help the crystalline ship, Miller reflected on how close they'd come to disaster. The warrior race's instinct for combat had nearly destroyed what human patience had achieved. Yet in the end, it was the combination of human caution and calculated risk that had saved the day. Begin preparations for repair operations, he ordered. Let's show the galaxy how humanity handles a real first contact situation. Within the specially constructed meeting chamber aboard the Prudence, Captain Miller sat across from something few had ever seen. The crystalline beings, finally able to safely emerge from their protective energy field, stood before them. They were beautiful, translucent forms that caught and reflected light like living diamonds. Their bodies seemed to shift and flow, yet maintained distinct shapes. Through the universal translator, they began to share their story. We are explorers, the crystalline being's thoughts translated into words. Our home lies beyond what you call the galactic rim. We search for others who study and learn, as we do. Dr. Wells sat nearby, recording everything while trying not to stare too obviously at their visitors. The warrior race's representatives, including Bolt, watched from a safe distance, their previous aggression replaced by cautious curiosity. Your protective field, Miller asked, it was meant to shield you during your journey. Yes, the being's thoughts rippled through the translator. An energy cocoon to protect us from cosmic radiation and space debris, but it malfunctioned in this region of space. We could not control it properly. And when our ships attacked, Bolt began, understanding dawning in his metallic features. The field responded automatically, growing stronger, more volatile. We tried to communicate, to explain, but fear and violence only made the field more unstable. Engineer Roberts, who had been quietly analyzing data, looked up from his pad. The energy field was like a living thing, wasn't it? Reacting to threats, trying to protect you. The crystalline being shifted, creating rainbow patterns in the air. Yes, it was designed to be semi-sentient, adapting to dangers. But without proper control, it became too protective, too reactive. That's why our approach worked, Dr. Wells realized. We didn't trigger its defensive protocols. We gave it a safe way to stabilize. More crystalline beings had entered the chamber, each one unique in its shifting patterns. They moved with a grace that made the warrior race's heavy armor seem crude in comparison. Your species, one of them communicated, you are different from the others we encountered. You seek to understand before acting. Why? Miller smiled slightly. We learned the hard way that rushing in usually leads to disaster. Earth's history is full of examples where fear and quick action caused more problems than they solved. The others call you cowards for this, the being observed. They used to call us worse, Miller replied. But our caution has saved more lives than their courage has claimed. We've learned that true bravery often means taking the time to find the right solution, not the fastest one. Representative Bolt stepped forward, his movement carefully measured to avoid alarming their guests. We were wrong about humans, he admitted, and wrong about you. Our warrior cultures taught us that hesitation is weakness, that action must be immediate and decisive. Yet it was their weakness that saved us, the crystalline being responded, and perhaps saved you from a terrible mistake. The meeting continued for hours as both sides shared knowledge. The crystalline beings taught them about their advanced energy technology, while the humans shared their methods of careful study and safe containment. The warrior race's representatives listened and learned, beginning to understand that there was more than one kind of strength. "We would like to establish formal relations with your people," Miller offered. "Share knowledge, learn from each other, but at a careful pace with proper safety protocols." The crystalline beings conferred among themselves, their bodies creating complex patterns of light. "We agree," they finally responded. "Your method of contact has proven you worthy of trust. You protect not just through strength, but through wisdom." As the meeting concluded, Dr. Wells approached the captain. "The warrior races are requesting copies of our first contact protocols," she said with a slight smile. "Apparently, they're reconsidering their approach to new situations." Miller watched as the crystalline beings returned to their ship, their once dangerous energy field now safely contained and controlled. What the warrior races had seen as a threat, humans had recognized as a cry for help. Their cowardly caution had opened the door to a new alliance, new knowledge, and new understanding. "Sometimes," he mused, "the bravest thing you can do is admit there might be a better way than fighting." 3 months after the first contact with the crystalline beings, Captain Miller stood before the Galactic Council again. The chamber that had once been filled with fear and anger now buzzed with excitement and curiosity. "The human approach to first contact has proven invaluable," the council leader announced. "Their methods have been adopted across our territories, leading to peaceful resolutions in 12 potential conflict situations." Miller watched as holographic displays showed various encounters where careful study and patience had replaced immediate military response. The warrior races were learning, adapting, growing beyond their combat-first mindset. Furthermore, the council leader continued, "The knowledge shared by the crystalline beings has advanced our understanding of energy manipulation by decades, all because humans took the time to observe and understand rather than attack." Representative Bolt, now a strong advocate for the new approach, stood to address the council. "I once called humans cowards. I saw their caution as weakness, their careful planning as fear. I was wrong." The chamber murmured in agreement, a sound that would have been unthinkable just months ago. The warrior races, proud and ancient, were admitting that there might be better ways than combat to solve problems. "The crystalline beings have established their first embassy in our space," Miller reported. "Their energy containment technology, combined with human safety protocols, has created new possibilities for deep space exploration." Dr. Wells, now heading the Joint Research Project, stepped forward to present the latest findings. "We've learned that many of the hostile encounters in our recent history were simply misunderstandings. Species we thought were aggressive were often just trying to communicate or protect themselves." The council watched as she displayed case after case where taking time to study and understand had revealed peaceful solutions to seemingly violent confrontations. "The human approach has changed everything," one council member admitted. "Their cowardly protocols have saved more lives in 3 months than our bravery saved in years." Engineer Roberts, recently promoted for his role in the crystalline ship crisis, presented new safety guidelines for deep space encounters. "We're not asking anyone to stop being brave," he explained. "We're just suggesting that bravery comes in many forms. Sometimes the bravest thing is to wait, watch, and learn." The council chambers, once decorated with weapons and battle trophies, now featured scientific equipment and communication devices. The warrior races weren't giving up their strength. They were adding new tools to their arsenal. "We propose," the council leader announced, "that all first contact situations now follow the human protocols. No military response without first attempting peaceful study and communication." The vote was unanimous, something rare in council history. The galaxy's most warlike species had learned that there was strength in caution, wisdom in patience. As the session ended, Miller found himself surrounded by representatives who once mocked human caution. Now they asked questions about Earth's history, about how humans had learned these lessons. "It wasn't easy," he told them. We made many mistakes, rushed into many disasters. Before we learned to be careful, each protocol, each safety measure, was written in lessons learned the hard way. The crystalline being's ambassador approached, its form shimmering with patterns that the humans now recognized as expressions of joy. Your species has changed the galaxy, it communicated. You've shown that understanding is stronger than fear. Miller looked around the chamber, seeing how much had changed. The warrior races still wore their armor, still carried their weapons, but now they also carried scientific instruments, studied alien languages, and looked for peaceful solutions first. Perhaps, Bolt suggested, standing beside Miller, we should stop calling it cowardice. What humans do, it's not fear, it's wisdom. The council leader nodded in agreement. From this day forward, we recognize the human approach as a form of courage. The courage to wait, to learn, to understand before acting. As Miller prepared to return to the Prudence for another mission, he reflected on how far they'd come. The galaxy was changing, growing, learning that there were many kinds of strength, many forms of bravery. Ready for another careful adventure, Captain? Dr. Wells asked with a smile. Miller nodded, knowing that somewhere out there, more discoveries awaited. Discoveries that would only be made by those wise enough to approach them with caution, patience, and understanding. The humans had shown the galaxy that sometimes the greatest victories come not from charging in, but from having the courage to take things slow.